Hi, I think the room might be muted.
Yeah, it was fine for a minute and then now it's off. It may be because they're in practice session.
Oh, maybe. It's not just me, right? It's just
Right. It's not just you.
How are you doing, Rich?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good.
You look good.
Thanks. Good seeing you.
You too. You too. Hope to see you in person.
I can hear you, Rich, and I can hear Eugene.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the room. They were fine. I joined a little early and they were fine, but they yeah, I'll text them. Hold on.
Yeah, I see Susan talking.
Yeah.
Just on mute.
I'll just call.
I think we hear you now.
You're fixing it. Yep. Hey, you guys know you're on mute, Susanna? Yeah. Can we hear? Can you try?
Right.
Yep. All right. All set.
Okay, 6:35. Welcome everyone to this executive meeting. I'm the board chair, and according to our secretary, we have a quorum.
Susan, you're not intelligible. Sorry.
Breaking up a little.
Breaking up. Okay. I don't know what I'm speaking. Should I move this closer to me?
It's better when you're closer to the mic, Susan.
And the screen that you're on says that you're muted.
The screen says, oh, the screen says I'm muted. This is white though. I've got it.
That sounds really good, Susan, when you just spoke.
Nobody touch anything. It now sounds good. So nobody touch anything. Okay. Okay. So I repeat what it is the CB2 September Executive Committee meeting. I'm Susan Kent. I'm the chair of CB2. We do have an official quorum. So let's get started with the agenda. The first item is approval of the August Executive Committee minutes.
I have a correction.
You have a correction.
Yes, I emailed in a correction.
Okay.
Again.
Okay. Are there any, okay, we'll take care of,
Should I send it to?
it should go
I
to,
already have it, so
Okay.
I can just give.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone online have any comments about the, welcome? If any comments or about those executive committee minutes? Of course, the actual resolutions in there will be presented to the full board for a vote. We are just focused on the minutes of the meeting aside from that. Yes, Frederica?
I didn't get the agenda, the calendar, or anything.
It's in email.
It is? Okay, thank
Yeah, I
you.
got it. Came through.
I did not. Okay, you're a chair. I'm not.
Okay, it only went to the executive committee. We will send it to you now.
Here, I got it. I got her.
Thank you.
Yep. All set.
Send to me too, Rich, please. Thanks.
Yep, sure.
Okay, are there any questions, comments, corrections on those minutes? If not, I will take a motion to approve those minutes. A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I assume no abstentions, recusals, whatever. Thank you. Okay, now let's start with chair's report. Most of you should have received some sort of email from me discussing changes I've been making to our committee structure. My goal has been to create a sort of a structure that is focused on our core responsibilities and the expectation of both in terms of our mandate, what the city asks from us and what the community asks from us. Therefore, as a result, we are moving there. We had 13 standing committees. We will now have 10. The 3 committees that are they are not disappearing. They are sort of evolving. First is economic development and institutions. Valerie and I discussed this, and if you want to share your viewpoint, otherwise I can.
Sure. It just felt like it was a natural time to, really with the hybrid meetings and, really what was, really worked for that committee was really having large panels, and I had a really hard time, thinking of the time that the committee members put in and having us all be in this room and then have these great panels that are, in hybrid mode. And so, really, kind of brought it up to Susan as something that we should consider doing, and let's, we'll revisit that when, at a later time, should something come up, and then we'll naturally re-evolve. It still means we're still covering economic issues, but we're going to make sure that the core work is done in our other committees, and to make sure that board members' time is spent in really productive and fruitful manners. Thank you.
I think it's also, we're more effective if when there is some sort of a business economic type of a issue, that we assemble a working group or a task force. We pull members from committees to represent the various aspects of this issue, and we address it just the way open restaurants is being addressed. And this way, instead of sort of inflating our list of standing committees, we sort of approach things from a more targeted approach. Frederica, your hand's still up. Do you have a question?
Uh,
On
Thank
this?
you, Rich, for sending me the email, but what is actually happening to economic development?
It's no longer a standing committee. The various business issues would be handled through it, to the extent they can be, through an existing standing committee. If not, we would put together, as I said.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
But
The second one is equity, race, and justice. I'm sorry, a hand went up?
Yeah, we created the committee, the Economic Development, a few years ago to deal with the Small Business Jobs Creation Act. So it really was always a temporary thing. So I applaud Valerie for keeping it going, but I saw no path forward a year and a half ago. So
Yeah.
just-
The second is equity, race, and justice. I've had a long conversation with Mar, and I think we've agreed that the values of equity, race, and justice really need to be activated through our committees. ERJ should not be set aside, look good on paper, but not actually engaging those values in the whole sphere of our activity. So what I proposed to her, and what she has graciously agreed to do, Mar will be CB2's advisor on equity, race, and justice. And she and I will work together to, for example, find agenda issues that we can present to the various committees, so that the issue of, the subject matter of equity, race, and justice can now be looked at through the lens of the various standing committees. The last one is arts and culture. It is simply being recategorized as a working group, so that Ivy is now free to run it on a schedule that is more appropriate for that subject matter. That's where we stand. But this will also make our scheduling hopefully easier. My goal is that everyone should be able to get on, for most months, get on the calendar before full board to the extent that they want to be, and that also, to the extent possible, have a specific day of the week. That used to be our norm. And I would really like to get back to that, because it's easier to ask people to make a commitment when they know what day they're supposed to show up. Okay. I have to make a bunch of new assignments. Right now, I have assigned all of our new members to various committees, and I've shared that with them. I have not shared with other people because of this streamlining. There are other board members who no longer serve on two standing committees, and I must reassign them. So I have shared with, I think, most of you, the fact that I'm doing this. I have not shared it with those people yet, except for the new people, because I just had to get them moving. So there is room for discussion, but please be aware that the reduced number of standing committees combined with the fact that, all the committees are growing in size, and, we'd have to look at the big picture of where to fit everyone in.
I champion this.
Committee.
I'm sorry.
How many people for a committee then?
It isn't a hard number in terms of an absolute, but I do want them to be as fairly evenly distributed. Committees could run from few as 7 to as many as 10 or 11. It depends. I mean, I'm not going to it's not about math. It's also a question of where do people, I do want to take into account, to the extent possible, people's interests. I also have to take into account the other things that they do. Where do I think that they would be most helpful? Also looking at their backgrounds. Do they have skills that I would like to see brought to the table? So it's sort of a mix. It's yes, Shirley. Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Susan. When will you be distributing this new list of committee members to the general membership?
Well, I will, after I sort of work with any individual chairs, and I have what I believe is a final list, we will be updating. I will share it with each committee. I will then share it with every person who is being reassigned. And then our website will be updated for the public. I don't believe, Shirley, your assignments are going to change.
Yeah, I wasn't asking so much for myself, just for general knowledge about who's serving and where.
Oh, well, as soon as this is finalized, that will be a first step, is to get the website updated so everyone knows who serves where.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Brian.
You mentioned new members. Do we have a list of who that entails?
Who are our new members? Julian Horkey, Zachary Kazaz, Erica Olson, Emma Smith, and Ann Hager.
Maybe, Susan, it might be a good idea to distribute that.
Okay,
It is in former meeting minutes. It wasn't.
Something, I will send that out again, because they weren't officially on committees. People might have heard of them, they might have seen them, they might not have, but and part of the process is also distributing them throughout, not just throughout the committees, so that
Who they are. Associated with committees.
no problem.
And just one other detail, does that mean that we're back up to 50 members?
No, we're not. We still have, there are still 2 open seats. I haven't heard any movement on filling them they're both Eric Botcher seats, so he may decide to wait until next year. I have nothing on that. Okay. The proposals for the community planning fellows. The deadline is the 29th, but we may have more than 2 proposals to submit. And of course, we want to help those proposals be as good as possible. So I would appreciate, to the extent any committee has one, that the office receives a draft by end of business next Monday. This way we can go over it. If there's anything we catch that's missing, or we can offer you, some assistance in making it as appealing as possible. We only get 2, but it would be great if we could, put together something that really is appealing for a fellow to work on. And I know that Landmarks has got something in the works. I think, do you have something? I know you do.
Something. I submitted several, one from me and one from, and like 3 from one of my committee members. I was gonna make a suggestion about that.
Okay.
Which is that the format that we eventually have to fill out,
Mhm.
the form that we have to fill out, maybe people could use that as a template for submitting their ideas to you and to Mark.
So, interesting idea.
The format.
Interesting idea. Yeah, Shirley.
Now, following up, I just was going to suggest that same thing. That the application really tells you what they want. So it's a really good guide.
Okay.
People
Okay.
what they should.
I will definitely review the Landmarks one in light of that.
But we could all, I mean, those of us who are submitting ideas could all go back and just plug them in,
Right,
reformat them.
right.
Also to lessen the load, once we decide which projects we want to submit as proposals, you don't have to rewrite the whole thing necessarily. You might just have to tweak it, but you don't have to start from scratch.
Although I would ask if you've got several, I think you're gonna have to pare it down because I don't want to submit 2 from
Yeah,
those one committees. So
well,
we'll work on it. We'll work on it anyway. But please, if you've got something, I would really appreciate seeing some sort of a draft by end of business Monday so that we have time to do whatever it is and not wait till the last minute. Not that waiting till the last minute isn't always a pleasant challenge.
I also wanted to say something to the board in general, which is I'm submitting a proposal that interests me, but it's really it's not a human services issue. It's really more of a traffic issue, but I'm still interested in it. I would be happy to guide and all that kind of stuff. If anyone has projects that are really more of a human services question, for example, or an SLA or anything like that, they're not strictly in your committee, but you find them interesting, I say go ahead and suggest.
And
just send us a copy. Send the committees chairs a copy so that we can.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I mean, there's no proprietary
Right.
ownership of an idea. So. The last one is about public members. While many committees have them, except for the 3 that I know applied this year after I became chair, I have not been able to determine whether any of the other public members are actually active public members. Apparently, a lot of people don't realize that the term of a public member is 1 year and you must reapply every year, and their term coincides with the calendar year. So that in order to be a public member in 2023, you would have had to have filled out an application in 2022 or at whatever time you planned during the year to join. If you wanted to serve the full year, you should have applied in 2022. If you joined midpoint, you would have provided your application then. If you've got public members on your committee and we can't verify that they're public members, they're not public members. Certainly you want to have them continue to participate. They can't vote. Please, you have to be able to confirm with the office that they are public members. Otherwise, they cannot vote. And that's where my concern really comes from.
Would it be possible for the office to just send a list? I have a public member on my committee. I have no idea.
Well, I asked if they had records. So that's why I'm saying it's like, if any of your public members actually do have something that shows that they are a public member for the year 2023, please send it to us. We haven't been able to find anything. That's why I have to assume that except for the 3 that I'm aware of, none of the others are active. Yeah.
I'm just curious. I had told public members to reapply. The office never get them.
Okay, so that's what happens. So if they want to start participating, I'm sorry.
Just they were using, what email address people were using to do. You may have lost things with the info at CB2.
Okay, well, yes, Brian.
Patricia has a question.
I'm sorry, Patricia.
One time officially and copied you and Mark. The other one just notified me the other day that she didn't want to serve as So I have no more.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, no, the real issue here is that you've got people serving on your committee and they're voting and they shouldn't be voting.
No, I never even knew what the process was.
Yeah. There is, by the way, a link on our homepage at the bottom of the page with the application that they can get directly.
You're muted now. CB2 is muted.
Okay, you're right. Okay, thank you.
If someone was speaking in the back row, we couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear it.
That was
someone
just
speaking?
Patricia. That was Patricia just telling us that her two public members have resigned. So she doesn't have
Okay,
this
thank
issue.
you. Okay, thank you.
And that's all I have to say. Unless there are other questions about anything. Okay. So yours, Mark.
Okay, so for the district manager's report, I'm going to call up. First of all, can you hear me from back here, or do I have to go up and sit? You guys okay with that? Okay. So I'm sharing with you the Google Drive and calling to your attention the latest addition, which is this line right here, the district needs statement and budget requests Google Drive. And in a wishful thinking, I started it with 2025, with hopes that we'll fill in for future years. And under that, you'll see the following major categories. And if they're having trouble reading that, it is budget priorities, capital and expense for fiscal 24 that were approved last year. So this is in effect as a starting point for your budget priorities for the fiscal year we'll be talking about, which just to make life easy, fiscal year 2025. So it's the fiscal year that starts next July 1st. We're already in fiscal 24, so we're looking ahead. Let me see. And then if you look here, if you click down to that, you'll see that I have them essentially separated by capital and expense. And then within that, they're separated in two ways. They're presented in two ways. One is the numerical order in which this board voted on them last year. And then the other is arranged or sorted by agency. So your committees may very well do business with only one or possibly two agencies. So you can just look at that list and see where you're at. I've also cut and pasted the agency response to which often, which by the way, is not at all unusual in that the agency could respond to a different question than you posed. That does happen. They also don't respond to every question that you or request that you post and instead answer one from the previous year. All of this does happen. But anyway, for what it's worth, and you know, if nothing else, when they say we don't support this, you may or may not want to take that into account in asking for it this year. I will never say don't ask for it again, because maybe this will be the year in which you gain traction with that, or maybe change circumstances. Anyway, so that's one resource. And I'm going to go back up here. Sorry, what's the best way to do that? This best way to do that. Okay. Okay. This next line is the narrative statements. Now keep in mind that the district needs statement fills in boxes on a form on the Department of City Planning website. So their categories sometimes merge more than one of your committees, one of our committees. So for example, libraries get lumped in with like land use, I think. Anyway, land use gets lumped in with landmarks and anyway. So I listed them down with categories that the DCP website calls for, and I've given you what we wrote last year. One thing to note is that there's only so much room on the DCP website. They don't give you unlimited characters. It's not quite the artist that used to be Twitter, but it's similar in that there's a limit to how much you can put in. So if you take a look at each of the entries, that'll give you a ballpark of what's going to fit in the box. You will also notice that, quite understandably, quite appropriately, last year's and the year before's narrative statements said a lot about COVID and the responses to COVID and so forth. That may not be what we want to highlight this year. There's also one that I'll commend to everybody's attention, which had to do with public safety and emergency services. We don't have a public safety committee per se. I will tell you that from the office perspective, as much as we hear about complaints about anything, we hear about complaints about the noise, the restaurant.
Spinning behind you.
So somewhere in there, you may or collectively may want to give some thought to whether we could, first of all, how we should frame that entry, because it is one of the required entries. And the other is, what do we want to say about that?
It's always in the back.
And so forth. Okay, but I think you get the point of all this. And then just to highlight the other resources that I hope are going to be useful. And where it's a distance. Okay. This is just the PDF as it exists on the DCB website. And then right now, actually tomorrow is the second of 3 days in which the Office of Management and Budget convenes for about an hour at a time, consultations with agencies. And so I put into this file, a sub-file with each agency that has responded. So the district managers, all 12 of us in Manhattan, have these meetings. Everyone's welcome, by the way. And at the bottom of this list, you'll see an email that I saved that has the roster of agencies as they are going to be called upon tomorrow and then a week from Thursday. So for example, the Department of Education, SCA, is a week from Thursday. I'll be the lucky guy forcing that. Many agencies provide us with their written responses to the questions that were given to them in July. Many do not. DOE, as far as I can recall, the last 5 or 7 years, has never submitted written responses, either before or after. But some agencies give you an awful lot of detail. So for what it's worth, you may want to check out and see if there's something in there that will be useful as you approach all of this. So that's what I've made available to you. I hope it is useful. I just talked about budget consultations. What you can do is to start looking at this. If I could take a liberty to addressing the committee chairs, I see no reason why this has to be just your responsibility. You have committees, and I would think that it would be both profitable and appropriate for you to find some way to divvy up the work so that no one person gets overwhelmed with it. Depending on your committee, you may want to reach out to CBO partners, whether it be Greenwich House or Transportation Alternatives or any agency with whom you often do business, to see if they have input for you that either would support a budget request or highlight a need. Now, I'm going to contradict myself in one quick second, which is to say that in the narrative statement, we do have to keep it short. But there is no rule that says that you can't highlight a district need that doesn't actually have a budget solution. There may be some that require other kinds of solutions. And if they're serious enough, by all means, that should be your prerogative to include that. The flip side, however, is that good practice requires that if you're going to ask for money for something, it ought to be identified need in some way. That's just the way that generally works. Reminders, when we talked about this in August, but I'll repeat just quickly, we're required to identify 3 top issues. That should be a board-wide discussion and so forth. I presume, I don't know your practice, but I assume that that's a preview for the executive committee next month.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, last year, your top 3 were land use trends - affordable housing, parks and open space with a bracket for Elizabeth Street Garden, and schools with a bracket for Bleecker Street School. I talked about public safety. And then each committee needs to select one top priority to highlight in its section under those different DCP categories that we mentioned above. Where they merge 2 different things like landmarks and land use, each of those uses can identify their own top need. And that may be useful as you go forward. So that's my report on, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Oh, maybe I move for a second. Go ahead. Susanna and Shirley, and then I see Katie.
Thank you for this, and thanks for doing this, because this is really helpful. I have a couple of questions. One, you mentioned questions that are submitted in July, and that's news to me. I just wonder if there's an opportunity for committee chairs to contribute to those questions when they come up in July, or if that's something that's strictly done by district managers. It's just news to me. And
Sure. So what first happens is Susan Stetzer and other colleagues divide up the various agencies among the district managers. So no one of us has to. So I've been doing DYCD and ACS forever. So I just continued to do that. And it was kind of thrown together at the last minute, so I apologize that I didn't circulate that better. And then other DMs will fill in other agencies. Some lucky person gets night shift.
so in other words, I guess my question is there an opportunity or an expectation or a hope or a willingness to get input from committee chairs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And going forward, I'll make a note to do a little better job next year on that. There aren't a lot of committee chairs or board chairs that participate in this process. I did for reasons that are historical, starting with the committee that I chaired once upon a time in another universe. But absolutely, you're welcome, and you're welcome to attend. And there is always time for Q&A at these budget consultations, especially the way I run them. So if you want to zoom in just for that hour of whichever committee, you're more than welcome. The other 11 other 9 district managers down to would welcome it as well. I'm certain of that.
Right. I have two other questions. One is whether the FY24 information can go onto the website, because right now we end at FY23.
It took me a while to find it, so.
Oh, okay.
So I apologize for that, but now having found it, you're right. I should put up 20.
That'd be great. And the other question I have is about public safety. So public safety at one point was described as part of the purview of the Social Services Committee at the time. It then pulled out of that. There was a question about putting it into quality of life. I'm not sure. I mean, when you say that we get so many complaints about public safety, and when I think of what's going on in Washington Square Park and impacts on economic development and on quality of life, I do wonder whether there should be a committee that has it in its scope. And then of course, there's a question about how to manage that, because each precinct has its own monthly meeting. And at one point when I thought I was supposed to be doing public safety, I tried to get them all to come to a meeting, and that was really hard to do. So I would just offer that to the chair as something to think about, how we address public safety if it's such an important concern among our community.
Okay, we'll take it under advisement. How's that?
And if I could add to that, not only does each of the 4 precincts have a community council, but each precinct is divided up in either 3 or 4 sectors.
Right.
Named interestingly A, B, C, D, that have what they call in the block meetings, which are usually called on very short notice at strange times. So, but if you really want to know what's going on, then you get to meet with the NCOs, the neighborhood coordinating officers, and there's a sergeant who's in charge of them. This is the community policing initiative that started, I think, 2 administrations ago.
Well, so one thing that Susan might consider is that the community board not deal with public safety, that we just let the precincts deal with it in the way that they currently do. But that's something for us to think about. Yes.
I think it's important to have at least one community board member at the community council, because that's where the action happens. So at the different precinct community council, I tend to hop onto the 6 every now and then.
Why do I not think I thought we had somebody.
I've only been to one in my lifetime, and I wouldn't want to. Let me tell you.
I think the 6th used to conflict with a lot of our human services meetings, Susanna. So that might be why. It often was the same night.
Anyway, I just think that maybe public safety is something that merits consideration. Like,
We've been sort of dividing this up depending, like, for example, if you mentioned Washington Square Park, this was something that was dealt through parks. But maybe there's something that we coordinate, like putting together a little working group that would take it from different angles. Again, I have to think it through. Yes, Katie has been very patient.
So,
Well, I
Also-
haven't, thank you, Susan. I'm not I'm not an experienced Google Drive person, trying to get used to it, but I don't even know where to find this thing. Mark, did you send us an email? How do I get to this page that you're put up?
So, there's an email to all of the executive committee that I sent last night that has hot links to the top, to the first link on the Google page. And then there's actually, in my email, I gave hot links to each of the sub folders. So you can jump right to the folder you're looking at. So that was last night, I don't know, around 10 or 11, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was late. It was late. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I find it now.
Yeah.
I found it now.
Okay, so that should be, and by all means, if anybody has trouble finding any of this stuff, I'm very happy to email stuff to you. I just thought this was a good place so that everybody was working off the same information. So please, give me a holler if there's any need.
okay. Oh, so I just wanted to interject. Transportation is also to do with public safety. Streets.
Yeah.
Actually nowadays, what kind of modes affecting it? Okay, questions. Customarily, we used to have our budget requests discussed in committee. Are we still intending to have everybody have that on their agendas? That was usually in October.
It should be. I mean, this is your time.
And I think
This is your time to do that.
added by the office.
Yeah, I did, as the August. In hopes that maybe some of the committees would take it up in September, but you do have another chance before executive in October. To raise it in your meeting, right, so you only have one chance, which will be your meeting next week.
Yeah, definitely some kind of notice should be sent out to all. of them.
Right.
Right.
And then
Well,
right.
Sorry.
Make sure that they have that on their agendas. I mean, it was like a uniform thing across the board.
So so if you want me to ride herd a little bit, I'm glad to do that. Everybody does that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just as a preview.
That way we confer them with our committees and then they give their input and the public as well can give theirs.
Right.
That's why we
Great.
did it.
And then speaking of the public, we are required by charter to have a quote unquote public hearing on the budget. What a lot of boards do, and Susan and I started to talk about, we'll finalize the plan. But what we may do is just meet the full board in October a little early. I'm sorry, for the executive, a little early, and then count that as our public hearing. It would be great if we had lots of people show up. It's my experience that except for the years in COVID, nobody does. But
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not done. Okay, what was the other one? Okay.
I know.
The transportation committee always met with Ed Pinkar or the previous DOT commissioner. And usually it's their office, but we did have a meeting and that was July, wasn't it? When you actually arranged it in the office. So I guess we don't have to really have that kind of meeting.
no, I can share my notes from that meeting. That would be.
Oh, that would be,
Right.
and I have some notes someplace too.
Yes, I remember that. Exactly. Okay, I had more. Yes, Carter.
I was just gonna say, Susanna raises a great point, but part of this is lasting interest throughout the board, and what happens, we end up doing this to the last minute scramble. And I really like what done, it gives you a chance to look at the responses. And I noticed that the top 10 capital responses, not a single one had any positive
Never say.
engagement. And while there's other reasons for that, whatever they may be, but it's something to think about because this is an opportunity to get stuff at the forefront. And I noticed that schools, a bunch of stuff that said was already funded, the ones we put in last year. So we didn't lead on those, they already got funded. So it's like, it's just a weird situation, but our board historically hasn't been super involved in this. And I'm really happy, Mark, that you have a lot of experience in this, because I think it's a good way for us to maybe start thinking about this in a lasting manner through the year. It gets us.
Now that we got it this way, it's
Yeah,
the opportunity.
But we still only have a month.
Right.
And so that's just
This time, yes, but if now that it's set up, going forward into next year,
Right.
I think we will be able
And
to.
this leads into the next point is then with the advent of COVID, I don't think we did it before COVID. Valerie was managing the organization. If everybody remembers each year, what goes where as we discuss it. And it took taken an inordinate amount of time in our meeting to get the list together. Is there any way to get the list in advance so we can better have the meeting and have it set up? I don't know, I remember there was some app, that's what I remember that we were using, whatever it was, or some way, because that streamlines our executive committee meeting because it's taken forever to
Can I
get through
understand
it.
you, let me ask a question to clarify, is what you're saying that transportation comes in with 5 requests, parks comes in with 5
Whatever
requests,
it is.
and then you got the board that order to
Yeah,
that?
no, just that it's put together for us.
Oh,
And we have done that, but it just, if everybody remembers, we sit here and talking and then we wait to move stuff around. And then it gets confusing and then it's another 5 minutes and then it's, you know, then everybody gets tired at the end. And by the time we get done with one and get to the other, whichever order we've done, it's a long process. And so the tech side would be really helpful. Now that we're hybrid, maybe we did it on a whiteboard for that. And just, you know, would renumber everything, so it's.
So there's 2 ways to approach it. Yes, I do anticipate circulating in advance whatever I receive. That's a preview of my next link for this
You
week.
signed it, right?
But yes, I
They
do
will sign it.
anticipate taking whatever, you know, sort of by committee, what the requests are. And then if you'll allow me, I'll even take a stab at trying to order them in much the same way that last year's were ordered by subject matter. Of course, I'm not a board member, so it's just a place to start. So you're not looking at a blank whiteboard.
So I guess the question is, I guess is the question for the committee, do you want to use the Trello board again? Because I've got it from last year.
Oh.
So that's, you know, if you give me the items in time, I'm happy to put it into Trello. If not,
That'd be great.
So that's basically what it is. Yeah. I just have to have it ahead of time so that it.
Yeah, okay.
Where did this data come from? Or isn't it filled in at all yet?
So this is last year's.
So I noticed, because I'm on the list of every planning board, 5 rows, that pretty much every other board sent out the district needs survey. And we have not publicized it at all.
Right.
Is there a reason for that?
I got it this week, so I'm not sure how
It's been out for a while.
Yeah, it has. I got it this week, and so I'm gonna try to pull it together and send it out.
And then how process the information received from that survey?
I've got to learn how to do it, but I think what happens is that we get a report, and I think it's digested by category of question.
Yeah.
And then I'll share it with everybody, but there may be a way to share, for example, only things having to do with education, one tranche, and then things having to do with transportation. I'll figure that out.
But, okay, so the question is so we get this information, but we're still required public hearing, right, to determine the recommendations.
We're required to hear.
So we use it to inform ourselves, and then, I mean, I don't even know how to do it.
Yeah.
Include them.
Probably the way it'll work, and probably it'll be best served by coming up with the integrated list of priorities by the time we do the public hearing. So we can say to the public, here are our top 10, here are our top 3, here are our top 10 capital, here are our top 10 expense. Once you get past that, you're putting things in there just so that your council member knows you care about them, not because they're going to affect anything in particular. No, that's not trivial.
Yes.
Council members look at these lists as one source of information about how to spend how to spend their member items. So anyway, so hopefully we'll get all of that together. But yes, we will still have a public
Go ahead.
I have a comment. I have never known that there was such thing as a district needs survey. I'm putting it in the I've been on this thing for 10 years? And I've never gotten feedback from one. So that's very interesting to me. I'm glad to know that such a thing exists. I've never practiced that before.
Yeah, I think that I'm being a new guy meant that I didn't get everything I was hoping to get.
No, I'm saying, I mean, in years past, I've never received it. I mean,
Yeah, no.
all the years
I'll
I've
pick
done
up
that.
the big old-
Well, that's not you.
I think.
No, what,
No.
wasn't you? You,
So is this through the borough president's office or who's administers this? PCB, okay.
And just as a thought, a lot of these went out on the calendar. And so that's a part of, thought process, how we do our mailings.
Right.
Just having a survey.
And we also have to thank Janine last year when we had no district manager for spending an inordinate amount of time and not knowing this stuff, which is probably why Mark wasn't the designated point person, because didn't have an office staff.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
it was
that-
brutal, it was
that's a-
brutal.
Problematic as we catch up from that void.
Well, and it's not my place to say, but if you take a look at the things that are in the Google Drive that I'm copying and pasting here, I'm organizing, I am not creating. And if you look at the level of input that this board put together last year with the skeletal staff and excessive volunteer hours, it's very professional on, imposing upon others' time. So kudos to those who did that. Okay, so that's my report on the district need statement. A couple of quick updates. Washington Square Park was mentioned. I have been going to these meetings convened by artists and street performers and what they call themselves expressive matter vendors in Washington Square Park. The purpose there is mostly to listen and report back. I was being a little bit too subtle. So the last meeting, I actually came right out and said, without referencing the actual resolution, that CB2 has passed resolutions that support the enforcement of rules. And my message throughout has been that if you want to change the rules, God bless, go try. But all rules should apply equally to all park users. And so that was the most recent expression, and we talked to the precinct about that, and they were grateful for the support, which I think was appropriate. So I'm glad that I was given that heads up and able to be less subtle. Okay. A few of you have asked about a form that isn't that allows Zoom or remote access, not based on a permanent disability. So
Qualifying disability, it doesn't have to be permanent.
right, a qualifying disability. Thank you. So we'll create a form for the one-off extraordinary circumstances so that there's a way to record that too. And then the final thing is the district manager asking the committee chairs, please get me your resolutions, hopefully tomorrow, because open meetings law requires us to post them a day in advance of the full board. So anything you can do to get me that stuff. Some of you already have, and I thank you. And those rest, I know that it's a lot of work in a short period of time. But I would be grateful for the support. And with that, I'm going to yield the floor unless there are questions.
I don't see any hands, so I think. Okay, next, I'm sorry, did you say somebody's hand? Okay. Next is a review of next month's calendar and the calendars for the end of the year. With regards to October, the one thing we should, any suggestions on when it's more effective to have that budget, that public meeting? Are people okay with starting? We could call it for like 6 p.m. and have an hour and then start our full board at 7 p.m. That was the thinking. If that's.
What's the venue? Will we have a limitation?
That's what we would have to check.
when do we have to submit it to the city?
I believe things are supposed to go to the city by, ideally by the end of October.
But we never do.
But it, exactly. It's not, it will still be accepted if we don't make the deadline. So, so right now we will have to check on our site to make sure that we can access it a little early in order to do that, but getting people together is tough enough. So, that's where we're going to meet that requirement.
My question is,
It's, you know, it's a good, I don't think so, because this is not us. This is simply an opportunity for the public to hear it, correct?
I think there's a minimum number of members that need to be there. For a Euler, it's 20% of the board. I think for a non-Euler public hearing, it can be, I think as few as 5. So we would have to have a few folks there, but I don't think it has to be.
What time did you say you want to start it at 6?
I think the plan would be from 6 to 7, and of course, if people didn't show and there wasn't anything, we would start the meeting, you know, when we had a quorum.
That's a separate. There are 2 separate meetings. It's not a part of it.
That's more, I believe so, yeah. Yes, Shirley.
So we would put in our reports, what's the committee discussed as the priorities, right? I mean, that's what we used to do.
Right.
And then that would be the basis for discussion.
So is it just going to be a public hearing where it's just public session, so you would be chairing the budget hearing and then running a public session, or?
You know, I don't recall us doing this, actually. I assume it would simply be a question of presenting this. This material will be online so that the public can look at it in advance, and then they can come and comment or ask questions.
Not a bad idea to just run through quickly at the top of that meeting. Here are our capital in order, here are our expense in order, without a lot of embellishment. They can read
Right.
Yeah.
And then they would have materials to look at and explain how the others are there for, you know, to show interest in, you know, without going.
So we'll get feedback on like where they're ranked from the public, or if there are additional items to add.
Public vote.
Yeah.
We would have already ordered it at exact.
Right.
But the other thing is, this could be one meeting. It could be either, I would think. The public hearing can be part of the full board, or it can be separate.
That's true.
And I just bring that up because my concern is more quorum for people being.
Yeah.
But it's not, because if we get there and nobody's there at 6.
Right.
Then what?
Well, the only thing is that if we're going to make this part of a board meeting, then you will have a quorum issue, because we're recognizing it as part of a board meeting, which means you are triggering a quorum requirement. So if we were to start at 6 o'clock, we're going to need a quorum at 6 o'clock. Whereas if this is a public meeting that's beforehand, whatever that lower statutory number is, then I think we would more likely have less of an issue making it, and then people would be showing up as available.
I'm open to the transparency and the extended time to have the discussion about budget items, but I'm going to ask, does this mean we've been doing it incorrectly in years past? Because we've only been doing this at the committee level, so just trying to understand.
I think so. I think the
I'm
answer.
not trying to assess any sort of blame, but I'm trying to understand.
We haven't broken it out this way. We're breaking it out in a new way to increase the opportunity for it. I mean, these meetings have been public meetings, but now we're sort of like taking it to another level.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the follow-up to that is, whatever input, how is that going to impact what the executive committee is already deciding?
Yeah.
And then do we have a protracted conversation about it at the full board, which we don't often have.
No.
Right.
And not that I ever recall. So having the public input at the meeting could.
Yeah, there's not much time in between.
Good, and it's also, these are things to be looking at down the road, just the way we have things on these lists that are not at the top now, but they're down further down, and they move up the list. That's what some of these things may involve too. It's taking the temperature of the community.
Which in theory should happen this week, right? I mean, in theory, that would be something that happens in September, and then we discuss it at executive in October, and then you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying,
Right.
I mean, it's just,
Right.
I think for next year, if we.
This is part of it. We're developing a new protocol. So we are going to do, based on the time we have, we're going to use it this way, and then learning from that, next year, we will be able to, more advanced notice.
Because to Susanna's point, I think you also want a lot of that discussion to happen at the committee level.
Yeah,
In the committee,
exactly.
so that it can be brought to exam with the full, with the.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're absolutely right, but we have to start somewhere and this is.
I agree. I will say all of this, I've never known us to do anything more than have a conversation at the executive committee level about any of this, so.
Susanna brings up a great point. There's no reason to put on the public session, this full board as the beginning.
But don't you have to give, don't you have to give advance notice? No?
I don't think that, I mean, I'm just saying that you give this as the main, and then each committee, people give additional input, it rolls up. But that leaves the input all happening before exam, so it's better discussed. As
Doing it-
opposed to commenting on the list after the. Just a
Right,
thought
right.
to bring, I mean,
But if you are trying to alert, I mean, it's giving the community 2 days to clear their schedule to come to a meeting. It's not really enough notice, is it?
Not for this.
no, I mean, that's,
Not for
but
the-
all the public, I mean, this is, we don't talk about public hearings much, but the public hearings have been marked as the committee meetings in the past for budget priorities. Because they've all been noted on our agendas as public hearings.
Right.
Inputs when they're noted. So Susanna, that's a great question. Does the public hearing, can it be a committee meeting? Or does it have to be an important? I don't know.
I mean, we've never done it as a full.
As long as
The
it's
difference though
properly.
is that these mark things with an asterisk and say that that's a public hearing. Because it means that we're gonna have or expect a resolution to come out of it. The public hearing that this anticipates is a little bit more formal. It's like the Euler ones, where you have to actually put it into the city record. So that requires a certain number of days notice.
So do we start on our agendas the way we do?
We would certainly start on our agendas that way, but we would take one additional step that we don't take with everything committee meetings.
And
Now, we could
publish
do
them.
that with your committee, like take your agenda and put it into the city record. Not that anybody but me reads the city record. And even then, I'm not really paying attention. But it, you know, they do bother printing it, so we could have.
Look, if we were to do it that way and put every committee meeting into the record for next month, then you would have all of this happening earlier. That's one way to handle this year as a transition year. Because we do not have, because we're not thinking about this as far in advance.
Anyway, I defer to the chair and the district manager to.
I think for now, it's a lot, yeah, look, we worked out something. I think it's, let's work with it and we'll just improve on it, you know, going forward. This is becoming more and more.
We're ready, we're back on the calendar, I'm ready.
You're ready for the calendar? Okay, what have you got to say about the calendar?
So, the outdoor dining working group is going to need an October date.
Oh.
Likely we'll have to double. So Mark, I'll email you. We're just gonna have to double up, because this is gonna hit, mid-month, for the rules, so.
You have a date in mind?
Either Monday, the 16th. I think the 10th would be too early. And I think the 4th would be too early. And I know those overlap, but there's just no other way to do it because we can't do it on the 18th, and even the 16th might be too.
Are you planning? Okay,
You think the 16th too? Anyway, so I will be working, I'll email you both directly, but we're gonna need
Okay.
a venue and
got
You're
it.
trying to ready it around the release of the regulations.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Is there,
going through it.
yeah, we only have 30 days.
But you have a thing on the.
General licensing can be inundated with applications, if the report of the town is simply not enough time for people to do their questionnaires, their outreach, their engagement, any of the things that we need done before we see them. It's just not enough time. None of these people, the great majority of them are not even gonna be from New York. They just aren't gonna be able to do it. So I may have to push back, but I'm happy to double up if nobody complains that there are meetings happening simultaneously at different locations. I can find my own location.
Do your resolutions need to be heard at full board in October, or would it be possible for them to be heard at full board in November?
It has to be October because it's a 30-day
Yeah.
That's the same issue.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll make that happen. We have to make it happen. We'll figure this one out.
And I think a small lawsuit, everything might just blow up. Maybe we'll have no happen.
Did OCM respond to something, meaning does the clock start ticking? They responded on that. Because the lawsuits, do they preclude them processing? I mean,
So there's no
meaning-
form, 30-day notice form for general licensing yet. People have been
That's-
getting their own. Them to us. Guidance for OCM is you don't have to accept them, that's not an official form. That's what we've been telling folks that have been trying to give notice to us.
I think folks are having trouble hearing, so if you could
Oh,
direct toward the table
yeah.
and speak up.
My question was just. If are they processing, I mean, they've said they are, but have these lawsuits in any way infringe on the processing? Which would mean the submission, the processing, has there been any clarity
So
on
it's,
that from OCM with the injunctions?
there are two things. For our part, the community board, that 30 days to comment on card applications, we are still doing those. So if we get a card notice, we are still calendaring them, having to do outreach and doing a hearing. If it is general licensing, which has not yet opened up, when those notices come, those are actual 30-day notices. So those are people who are not yet licensed. So card is already licensed. General applicants are not licensed yet. So it's just like FLA. They have to come to us 30 days prior to submitting an application with the state. That form is not ready yet, so we are not processing those. For the second part, the state is enjoined from further processing card.
Right.
General licensing is supposed to, it's announced, open on October 4th. The application will be posted October 4th, which means 30 days from October 4th, presuming they get their application up that day. November 3rd would be the first day they could apply for this with the state for a regular general licensing. But the OCM just did a lawsuit yesterday and they did the appellate division, not Judge Bryant in Ulster County where the other case is. And they sued for a stay on the injunction. We expect
to lift the injunction.
it's just to lift it, a 60-day.
You can't stay an injunction. You lift the injunction.
All right, so for 60 days, we expect that decision won't come down before the 25th of not the 25th of September, 25th of the month, which would, no, the 25th of September, we expect a decision on the case will happen and that the actual decision on the stay or the lifting of the injunction won't happen till later. So it really, we don't know. We don't know.
We
what's
have to be
gonna
ready
happen.
for it
So
though.
the first day we could have received the notice, but they haven't printed them, is September 5th or 6th or 4th, depending on whatever 30 days. Because if it opens on the 4th,
That's October.
it's a notice to us that they're applying in 30 days.
Right.
But there's no
So,
notice.
no, but that's what I mean. So
Okay.
it's actually the second they print the notice, when we can start receiving.
But let's talk about this.
That's.
Let's get our calendar through first. If there's nothing else on October, the big question is how we want to handle Thanksgiving. Traditionally, we have moved Thanksgiving up a week and have held it, the Thursday before Thanksgiving. We do have an option to consider moving the full board instead earlier in the week of Thanksgiving, but that could pose a risk in terms of just not being here and having a quorum issue. The upside to that is that it leaves more days to hold your committee meetings. It's trade-off. If we do the full board on the 16th, then we're gonna have to double up some things. Yeah, obviously, that would have to go. That would have to be moved up. The thing about executive, though, it's possible that we could go without it. I mean, in the sense that most of what's done here is a report. If I can provide the members of the committee with simply a report for the month, as could Mark, we don't actually have to hold a meeting if we're not going to vote on anything. We could handle it that way. Chenault, I had a question which I had sent you. You had sent me, the two options depending on when we hold our board meeting, and I didn't understand if we did go with the 16th and we had to move landmarks, your choices.
Monday and Tuesday.
Your choice,
Regular meeting on Tuesday.
Your choices seem to indicate that you would hold your meetings after November full board.
No, so the 13th and 14th.
Okay, that's not, okay, because your
We
email.
have 3 meetings, going by the normal schedule. The commission has the 3 meetings that have to be, whatever we have on those 3 has to be heard during November.
Okay.
And they're keeping to the regular schedule. The first one I would think then is the 28th.
That's right.
So, and our usual thing is to be as late as we can so that we're sure to capture everybody.
Right, okay.
We wouldn't want to do it the night before, I don't think. So it would seem that the 13th and 14th, and we can decide on the 6th if we have one meeting, which of those nights, if it can be sort of equal. The 6th would have to be our cutoff day.
Okay, so we'll have to, yeah, okay, because it wasn't clear what your email said. It seemed to indicate that you were okay with meeting after full board, and it didn't make sense.
No, that was not the case.
Okay.
It was only if the meeting is on the Tuesday, we can keep our regular schedule.
Okay, clearly we're gonna have some doubling up to do here. And we may have to generate another version of this, because otherwise we're gonna get very confused very fast. Yes, Rich?
Susan, and you kicked me virtually under the table if you don't want me to bring this up, but you've been talking about having a public hearing on Washington Square Park. Do you have a date in mind? We didn't say it was October, just you thought it was something that.
I don't know. We have been talking about it. I don't know what.
Council member is eager for us to do it.
I know.
When I say council member, this is Councilmember Marte. It's important to note that starting in January, Washington Square Park will be in the jurisdiction of council member. So a lot of effort's been put in by folks who may be transitioning out.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I'll tell you what, we will talk about this. We will figure out what's gonna work. And I also need to try to get a little more insight into what's going on in Councilmember Marte's head, because I don't really understand why there are so many of these meetings.
Yeah.
They're being called by the, I'll send you my notes, I have them ready. They're being called by the artists, not by the council.
Yeah. I think the wrong horse is pulling the cart here, so I'm I want to figure this out before we start scheduling anything. And then frankly, it's also not dealing with the totality of, we have other issues in the park that are not about the artists.
Right, but it sounds like that was the artist problem with something that Councilmember Marte has come out to try to solve, but it somehow has turned into fixing everything at Washington Square Park, and I'm not sure how we got to that.
Well, that's what I want to know before we schedule anything, because what we put on that agenda is going to have is really going to control how that meeting runs.
Well said. Yeah, the structure. Yeah, you're right.
No, I really need to know we really have to structure that agenda. So,
If we leave November for later to decide on this,
yeah, go ahead. Well, okay, well, we're gonna have to generate another November calendar and circulate that. Because right now, it's looking like,
Sooner rather than later.
oh, no, I'm talking like in the next few days type thing.
but we haven't decided which day that the board meeting will be.
You know, logically, I think our better chance is to probably just move it up to Thursday because that week of Thanksgiving, everybody tends to disappear, even
Right.
if they don't admit that they're going to disappear.
Even Thursday will be tough.
That's
Yeah.
right. I'm just anxious to give the commission as much headway as possible because this is so different from normal.
Yeah, well, we have that
And
problem every year.
they'll tell the
No,
applicant so.
it's different from normal in the sense that it's not like the other months, but every year we are forced to push our board meeting up a week.
Right. It's anything's fine as long as it's decided sooner rather than.
This is something I will be circulating in the next few days, to, municipality. Oh, awesome. Okay.
As long as they will have Monday and Tuesday as
But I think that otherwise we're the chances of us not having a quorum are like just too high to risk. If we don't hold it the week before Thanksgiving.
What would happen to the 14th?
We would do an executive on the 14th or some sort of, simply I would have some reports sent out, to the extent that anybody's got something to report and just share it with people instead of holding a formal meeting. That's this is not a regular committee, so that would actually be okay. Yes, Katie.
The last time this occurred was 2017. And we held the full board on the 16th, Thursday before. I don't have in my calendar what had happened with the executive board, but you could check on that. But we did. That was the decision that in 2017.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what we're going to work with for now.
I would only bring up that November will be the end of the 60-day comment period for City of Yes Economic Opportunity. So if that's anything that exec would need to discuss, that has a lot of. I'm just throwing it out there. I know that's Katie and Eugene's domain, but that's something to consider.
Yeah, hey, Valerie, sorry I didn't get back to you earlier. I know you had an email out to me about the City of Yes. When you mentioned those dates, are you taking into account that the referral date was pushed back?
Was my understanding for last week that it was coming out in October.
Okay, let me double check on those dates, because I think I was checking in on that earlier. And it seems like the referral date for when that's going to be referred out to the community boards may be pushed back. I think we're still trying to get some clarity on that. But thanks for bringing up the.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So we're good on October. You will all be getting shortly a new November so that we can lock something in. I don't know. I'm not ready to deal with December, to tell you the truth. That's a little far out, but what are we?
Yeah, I should do it.
Well, something we'll both of them will go out. The November and December will go out together, and people will look at it and give me and just send me in the feedback. I think it's going to be easier than trying to foresee December from where we are today. That's right. November may affect December. So let's leave it there for now. Okay, so if there's nothing else on the calendars, let's go to our committee reports. Oh, go right ahead.
I'm gonna do Susanna's report.
Oh, sure. Okay. Since Ivy is absent, let's start with cannabis, which we had already started with.
I did want to ask you, would it be possible for us to vote on that letter tonight? Only because we've been talking about all the other boards and well, not all, but many of the other boards, and they want to sign on.
Okay,
There was one just approved by SBS right across the street from the LGBTQ youth facility, really vulnerable population. It's going to be running for 3 weeks.
why don't you, first of all, the trouble is nobody's looked at this.
Like,
What I would say is that this should be new business and that we should circulate this so that we can actually discuss it. That would be what's at full board, that would be the proper thing to do.
we can
But if you want to give people just a brief synopsis of what this is, so we know what we're talking about.
So, in order to help distressed farmers, if you've been reading about it, can everybody hear out there in cyberspace?
over here.
It's good.
Here, I'll move over. Sit here.
So in an effort to help distressed farmers, who don't have enough dispensaries within which to sell their cannabis, and there's something like 500,000 pounds rotting across the state right now. The OCM has created the Cannabis Grower Showcase, and that is basically a farmer's market for cannabis. Minimum 3 farmers called AUCPs are involved, 1 AUCP, which is a processor, and 1 card licensee through which all of the, the money goes. They are the point of sale. The problem is somehow in the guidance for the CGS events, which often happen outdoors, it says the municipality, they need municipal approval. But somehow Cannabis NYC, which is a division of SBS, Small Business Services, has become the go-to for that, for municipal approval. The MRTA, the marijuana taxation and regulation law, says that the community board in the 5 boroughs represent the retail municipality, right? And we have authority over it, but not for these. So we don't have any say where these are happening. And I've been to CGS's, people buy and then they smoke right there. So wherever these things are happening, there are going to be people smoking, whether they're indoors or outdoors, they're going to be outside on the street smoking. There aren't a lot of rules around these things. We would like to argue that the community board is the entity through which municipal approval goes for all CGSs, as it should by law. And so we are writing a letter. Susan and I talked about this the other day, and I've spoken to a lot of other community boards to let the OCM and the mayor and SBS know that we should be the ones, and we don't approve these unless they come to us and explain to us what's going on. And this letter, gives all the reasons why that should happen. So I guess I'll disseminate it and we'll do it for full board. Was that a question or a stretch?
And a stretch. So are these happening like they need a street activity permit as well, or?
Right. So
no,
we don't know.
Where's any of the oversight? Cannabis NYC has decided they represent the municipality and have final authority on not just, cannabis sales, outdoor cannabis sales, indoor cannabis sales, location of cannabis sales, but also street activity, because what's happening is they're doing them at existing fairs and, street parties and block parties. And that's sometimes,
They're piggybacking on.
sometimes it's, open streets and, they're not really going through the process, in my opinion. Yes, Eugene.
Yes, so I think that sort of answers the question I was going to ask, which is the venues for these. I mean, I had heard about this, I think about a month or 2 ago in the news, and it seemed like a good idea at the time because, there needs to be some sort of venue, I guess, to get rid of inventory. Are these, it wasn't clear to me, is this literally happening at a farmer's market, like at the Union Square Farmers Market, or is that just the term that they're using? Is it like a separate event that they're that they're putting out?
It could happen at a farmer's market. It should not happen at the Union Square Farmers Market because the CGS guidance says that you cannot be visible from a youth facility, and under their definition, which is recreation for people under 17, a playground would actually be that, I think. But because of the way these are being approved, not actually through the municipality, but by one, city sub agency, they're not looking at the things that we would look at. And that's
I see.
this problem. So
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that helps.
that's all.
Okay.
For my application. So we had one application this month, 412 West Broadway. The owner, Jennifer Czar, Dagmar Cannabis, Robin Hood LLC, DBA Dagmar Cannabis. Jennifer Czar was a longtime Soho resident. She's a very interesting story. If you'd like to Google her, TZAR. So the dispensary is in a 4-story commercial building on West Broadway between Prince and Spring. It was previously 2, which was kind of a tchotchke shop. But I think that's been gone for a while. She's 10 to 10. It's a 4-story premises. The second and the mezzanine and 3rd floors will be offices. The 1st floor is only about 400 square feet. It's tiny. That'll be a really high-end dispensary. The basement is, of course, a vault, employee bathroom, and sanitation area. Entrance is only through the front. For patrons, there's security. She brought her security. He explained the plan, stanchions and ropes for queues, which we really don't expect. No opening party. There will be planters outside, which will be brought inside every night, only out during business hours, and will not obstruct pedestrian traffic. And that's about it in a nutshell. And we approved with steps. That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Seeing no questions. Well, in place of economic development, Valerie will talk about outdoor.
Quick outdoor dining, current outdoor dining for the working group. DOT released, let me make sure I'm speaking to the microphone. Could you pass it over here? DOT released emergency open restaurants enforcement rules last week that are effective immediately as of September 12th, 2023 until January 6th, 2024. Since the temporary open restaurants program is no longer a mayoral executive order, the agency had to enact emergency open restaurants enforcement rules. Since the enforcement of the temporary open restaurant guidelines have no jurisdiction without that executive order. So they include mostly everything, but not everything. So amplified sound is not prohibited in these emergency rules, and neither is seating in the amenity zone. So take that for what it's worth. It's expected that DOT will release the rules within the next 3 weeks. Once those are released, there is a 30-day public comment period and the CAPA public hearing, which is the City Administrative Procedure Act public hearing. And we are continuing our discussions with elected official staff and agency staff as we move into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see.
The permanent.
Human Services.
Okay, can you move that over?
Which,
Yes, Susanna asked me to just read this to you. They didn't meet in August. When they meet next week, they'll discuss budget requests and statement of needs. And another note, she'd like to suggest that while we all know that an asterisk means a public hearing, I don't know where that is posted on the calendar or on each committee's agenda. It would be nice if every committee agenda page on the website had an asterisk footnote explaining that that means a public meeting.
got it.
Well, can you repeat that?
Oh, sorry. So she's saying that while we all know that an asterisk means that it's a public hearing, there's no explanation for what that asterisk is on the website. So she's suggesting
Good, actually.
that it could have a footnote on each page explaining it's a public.
We used this before.
But it should also be on.
It is because we transitioned to the new calendar that you don't use the full board's calendar. Where all of the notices used to be on the full calendar, it's paper-based, but we've not ever properly transitioned to one or the other. So we keep dual records. So if you read the email that goes out each month from the office, it's indicated on there. And that's what's the public hearing, but it is not indicated on the board website.
Right.
When you go to the Google Calendar.
That's what she's saying. Got it.
That is fortunate Mark is not here, because that's been raised before.
So-
It's not new.
I think
Yes,
maybe
but-
Mark comes up with a standard sentence that everybody would use the exact same footnote.
Yeah.
On their page.
Got it. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Land use. Eugenia, are you or Katie, who is?
I can go. Land use and housing, we had a meeting for this, well, we didn't have this meeting for September, so we don't have a resolution for this month. So that's it for this month, and then we'll talk about next month. I get to
That's
that.
just fine.
thanks.
Okay, thanks. Landmarks.
We did have a meeting. For the first time in my memory, we recommended denial for all three of the applications. Guido said at the end of the meeting, I sounded mean because we kept denying. Nevertheless, we have two things to report. The sending of the letter to the Park Service concerning Soho and the ramifications of the rezoning. And Susan, how should that be circulated? Should it?
We can include it with the package.
Okay. And I think I did put it in, but if not, I'll check. And then the other item is that we have applied through the fellow program that was discussed last month for a fellow to do essentially what our last several year request funding has been from the commission, for the commission, to do a survey to try to get some written, concise idea of the violations that we see in the area. And we'll take a small part of the West Village and sort of expand it depending on the availability of the fellow's time and how complicated it really turns out to be, because the street survey needs to then be checked against the landmarks records and against our records, so that we're sure that everything that we identify is indeed something that wasn't approved or grandfathered or something else about it.
Okay.
So that's our entire activity.
Thank you. Parks.
Hi, everyone. Couple quick things. We had one topic at ours. It wasn't a confrontational discussion at all. A gentleman named Adam Ganser, who's the executive director of an organization called New Yorkers for Parks, presented the advocacy his group is pushing for. It's an initiative called 1% for New York City Parks. It's a campaign that was launched many years ago, but was revived in recent years. And what they want to do is have the city allocate 1% of the budget to supporting the 1,700 parks, 53 recreation centers, and the many pools, et cetera. It's currently about 0.6%. So this would be a big increase. And he did some comparisons with other cities, and he did the comparison over the years. It used to be much higher, but when the city was bankrupt in the 70s, it went down to 0.5, 0.6, and it stayed there. So interesting conversation, and I gave some notes in there and a link, and you can and he has the support of the mayor, the city council, most of them, and he's trying to get every community board to create a resolution. So that was that. And it'll be in our document. We, as we referenced before, we avoided some of the other conversations about Washington Square Park at the meeting, and there was some people who were disappointed about that, but as we said, we want to have a separate meeting on that. At the next meeting, there's been a request at our next committee meeting for a broader discussion on dog parks, all of the parks that exist, and any chance for more. I think it's an interesting topic. We haven't discussed dog parks before. So I'm trying to see if there's somebody who can come and speak to the community and our committee about that. Just a couple other things before I let you go. Passante Playground resurfacing has begun. That's a project that we spoke about several times. There is the Gansevoort Peninsula Beach, and with the beach is soon to open. I was there on Sunday. There was a whole bunch of workers scrambling around to open up. There's a great article in the Times. There is another discussion we had from a while back you might find interesting. There was a body that was discovered during some of the construction work in Washington Square Park when they were doing the new water tunnel.
No, it's not new body, it's an old body. Okay.
No, this is buried a long time ago. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. And there's a headstone for
It's
that.
an 18th century body.
Yeah, and there's a headstone for that gentleman that we talked about that at a meeting. They promised us they would do this, and it's on the 22nd. There's going to be a small event there. I think it's at 11 o'clock if anyone's interested. The only other thing, Susanna, who left, I was going to embarrass her, and now she's left. She's being honored by Hudson River Park at their gala on October 12th. So it's a great honor. And, so if you see her, embarrass her, belatedly. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Quality of life. We can't hear you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. We had another pretty extensive meeting this month. We're nearing, I think, the end, hopefully, of the heavy street activity season. But we did have 14 applications before us this month and another 7 FYI renewals. So another very heavy month. As far as the applications went, we continue to have some denials issued for, types of events that we've denied in the past. Events taking up the plaza for, various plazas for one or multiple days that are purely commercial. So, we continue to issue denials on those. Those events typically continue to happen regardless of our denials. We also had an event that was proposed to be in the curb lane right in front of the Target on the corner of Broadway and Houston. We thought that would be probably a safety issue, forcing people to walk into the street. So we've highlighted that one as a denial. And then the one that probably had the most community input was this Malbon golf event, which would involve, among other things, a golf simulator in front of the store, amplified sound, etc. They had previously done an unlicensed event for the store opening last year, which generated a large number of complaints. So, there may be some people that show up to full board to speak about that one, but we issued a denial on that as well. Looking forward, I've continued to mention we're looking for time to have a deeper sort of broad discussion about putting in place formal street activity policies. We're sort of going back on and forth on whether that should be a separate meeting. It doesn't look like there's much time in October. Maybe we can get something at the end of October, but I still need to check with the rest of the committee. We'll also see what the street activity lineup looks like for October, but that's probably going to be a meeting that's focused on district needs, as well as some remaining street activities. So we'll try to find time for that either in October or November, because I know a lot of people are also curious to see how that goes and to provide input as well. So stay tuned for that.
Oh, great. I see question from Dr. Smith.
Hi, Will. Did you get any feedback from the terrible disruption of the sidewalk on LaGuardia? The ice cream store on the corner of LaGuardia and Houston had for about 3 or 4 days of pop-up where the lines ran all the way from Houston all the way past Thompson Street. Did anybody share any of that information with you? People could not even pass on that sidewalk.
I did not get anything on that, so if you have it, please send.
Well, I actually took pictures and sent to Mark Diller. I'm surprised you didn't hear about it. So you're saying you didn't
What's the
hear
name of the
anything at all?
store?
I beg your pardon?
What's the name of the store?
Morgenstern's ice cream had a pop-up for about 4 days, and the lines were from Houston all the way past Thompson Street on LaGuardia, and people could not pass on that side of the street. I took pictures. I sent them to to Mark Diller. I'm surprised you didn't hear about them.
I got an email, I think, confirming, because I think you'd asked if there was a SAPO permit. I got an email confirming that there was a permit, but I don't think I saw the pictures. So I'll just make sure Mark forwards those to me.
Yeah, well, it's also something you need to talk, and I used to be on that committee. It might be something you might want to see if they want to come back again. I mean, it was just it was very disruptive, just to let you know.
Okay. Yeah, we wouldn't typically have them come back after the fact, but we would keep a note of it for any future street
I know
events.
we don't.
Yeah.
I'm saying they come back to you in the future, not from this
Oh,
particular.
yeah, no, we always we'll keep a note of that for the next time. We always do that.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Okay. No other questions. Thank you. Schools.
Oh, I'm gonna sit here.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everyone. School met last night. Hold on, my notes just disappeared. The agenda was back to school 2023 information session about the initiative, goals, and programs that will enhance the educational experience for our students and shape the year ahead, with speaker District 2 Superintendent Kelly McGuire. He basically went over the school year ahead. Summer learning focused on closing achievement gaps among students, including different racial demographics, students with disabilities, and English language learners. The DOE organized teacher workshops on topics like literacy, middle school math, fostering positive school environments, successful summarizing program that's for nearly 2,000 students. Concerns were raised about the quality of after-school programs in the middle schools, with a need for more substantial offerings, including homework help and enrichment and activities. Efforts to support English language learners and students in temporary housing were discussed, including hiring additional teachers and involving district teams. Questions and comments submitted to the committee involve support for on-screen admissions and inquiry about Bleecker School. The committee discussed the topic of middle school admission policies and the potential impact on student opportunity. There was a resolution to maintain the current admission policy, which was discussed and unanimously voted on last night. That was our meeting. Okay.
Okay, no questions. So let's go on to SLA.
I get it. SLA 1. Church on the 5th, and we heard 10 applications. 2 of them were laid over at the meeting. The decisions were unanimous. All of them were unanimous. I think I'm still working on stipulation on one. And then SLA 2 meant Thursday the 7th at the church, and that one also had 10 applications that we heard. All of those decisions were unanimous, and one was the cornucopia cruise signs. Katie, we have signed stipulations. Maybe I need a microphone. I see Jeffrey. We have signed stipulations from cornucopia cruise lines. So I think that maybe you'll be happier when we have the phone number. So if there are any issues, please call them. And then there was one denial for a tavern on premises bar tavern license on Carmine Street. We had heard them last month, and then they came back again this month.
It's just, it was a previously unlicensed location. It's one of the few actually unlicensed locations left on that street. There were 4 block associations spoke against it. The number of residents came and spoke against it again for the second time. There are residences, ground floor residences right next door. They're installing an open facade. They have outdoor seating. So that one was a denial. And I think everything else was kind of nondescript.
Okay, great. No questions, traffic.
Yeah, okay. Let me pull this close. Everybody out there hear me? Okay. We had 2 pretty straightforward items on the agenda. One was a request to co-name Mulberry Street, and I believe I forgot where it is, in Little Italy. So Mulberry and Grand Street, the corner of Mulberry and Grand, for a guy who they described really was a neighborhood hero who sold Italian candies at that corner of Mulberry and Grand. People gathered there. People on the block all sent a petition around the area in favor of the co-name. He was an activist. He was instrumental in getting the first affordable housing in years and years and years in the neighborhood. Collected all kinds of charity, went around to businesses and neighbors, and he perfectly fit our co-naming guidelines, which require the co-names to have done tremendous contributions to their immediate neighborhood and the community. Perfect. I've just got to tell you what his name was and what they called him. They asked for the corner to be co-named Vinnie Peanuts, Sorelli Sabatino Corner. And that was his popular name, Vinnie Peanuts. And we were so delighted to approve that request. And the second request was for kind of a serious thing. It was for a traffic light on Houston and Worcester Street. And it turns out that Houston and Worcester is the only street, the only intersection, I should say, that does not have a traffic, which means that from the next blocks, the vehicles just forge forward and rush right by. And people have to wait forever if they can get a chance to cross at all. There's a big aging population there. There have been crashes there in the past. We're really urging DOT to put in that traffic and also a crosswalk. I hope they will.
Okay, thank you. Is Dan still here? Because he had offered to give us a brief report on Hudson River Park Trust, but I don't think he's still with us. So I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Have new business.
No, okay, he is not here. So any new business?
Yeah, and it's really to do with what you've been talking about, Carter, which is what we post on our website of background information. We have been doing applications for permits, that kind of thing. And we had talked about maybe discussing this meeting. We have the time. You had asked me for microphone. Here.
Carter, you want to come over? You mean expanding to other committees?
No, our requirement is the public notice requirements. If we have a document that we're going to be discussing at a meeting, that it is supposed to be posted online one day ahead of time. So it would be any applications, requests, like whatever the official notices are, so people can review it. And then just to the point, it makes it more efficient. So that when it gets to the meeting, people have already had an opportunity to see it, particularly when it goes to questions. And also so that instead of seeing it on a screen, people have a chance to look at whatever it is that they're discussing.
Okay, so.
And then just to the point, which I emailed Shirley with the street co-naming, since there's a community board application people have to fill out, whether that would be posted, and Mark had posted it, but then there was the request, and is that it's an official request that we're discussing, but do we post any materials with respect to what people have submitted for the request? So for example, in this case, of having the stoplight, whatever was submitted to the board.
But the only thing that was submitted was a request. I mean, it was a note from Sean, which is often, I mean, I frankly don't think those kind of requests belong there. They are already on the agenda. There is no back.
Well, I mean, meaning if they're doing a presentation at the committee, the presentation should be.
To the extent, I agree, to the extent that you're talking about a presentation, to the extent there's an application, to the extent that there's some sort of formal documentation.
Right.
But not necessarily something that's simply coming from the community in the sense of those commentary. That's not what we would do.
No, but there's a request for discussing the request, so. it's an
request to
agenda
review.
topic,
Uh-huh.
right, as opposed to comment, which I agree.
Yeah.
Which is separate.
I
But
think
the underlying request
guidelines.
is up as an agenda item.
Right. Well, I think that was gonna depend, that's gonna be something that if the committee can coordinate it, the office to have it done in an organized way, then it is I mean, that's something that.
We're happy to post whatever it is that.
So it's just a matter of that, so maybe
So it's really gonna come down to each committee coordinating it, you know, in terms of what they think is appropriate to,
Well, I must say that in certain cases, I mean, DOT will say they'll give us a presentation, but they are very reticent to send anything in advance. That's
it's what it is, that case, you know, we can't force anybody, we can only comply with, you know, what's available.
I had sent this to you, it's part of the open meetings law.
Right.
That basically says require that records to be discussed in an open meeting be made available to the extent practicable upon request and posted online at least 24 hours before the meeting if you have a website, which we do. And then the idea is just, we've had so many meetings where we get these presentations that you see in the moment, you move right through the slides, and then it's like, oh, ask a question, give a comment, and you have no idea what's happening. And this isn't targeted at any one committee. Obviously, DOT has done this, but it really, in order to get proper feedback and have better trust and more efficient meetings, it makes a big.
You know, look, I completely agree with that, but again, it's gonna come back to the committees coordinating this so that we can, you know, the office is not going to go searching, you're not gonna go reaching out to you, you've got to you've got to work with the office in order to make sure this stuff is on.
Right, so in other words, each committee chair, when they have something where they think.
Yeah, you have to use your judgment, what elements are there, and then we can work with, the office can work with you.
Right.
But anything, all those things are foilable. And that's why they're required to be posted on the website.
Right.
in advance. So things don't mysteriously end up on our agendas. And if people coming, it makes them.
Oh, you don't have, you don't have to, you know, the logic of it is.
And you know.
That will show up with a presentation that obviously was prepared well in advance, but they don't share it until the meeting. They say that they're tweaking until airtime. DOE does that as well. Again, we're happy to post whatever it is you give us with things like FLA and even with an application for a pre-co name. It's pretty obvious what it is that we need to post, and if you give it to us, we'll post it. Others may not be as obvious.
I mean, we led to do that. I mean, that happened because we wanted to make meetings better.
Yeah, no.
Because if people see this stuff before.
I would just suggest that when you're in a situation and that agency is declining to provide you, that you just make a notation in your minutes so that nobody is going to turn around and say you didn't do it. It's like it would be provided.
And then
add it afterwards.
after the presentation.
Or whatever, yeah, you can
do, you know?
That's also possible.
So
We can always post.
you can always post it after, yeah.
That's right.
So that they don't care about because they've already done their presentation. I have one more thing to add.
Okay.
My report, and that was the cargo bike thing. There was a hearing for the new cargo bike program. And basically, we really heard about a protest from another community board. Too late to be able to do a resolution. So what it was simply that nobody wants cargo bikes parking on sidewalks. And this is one of the stipulations that is being presented. And so the committee discussed it. We went to Susan. Susan and I worked out the testimony. I must say that Susan really honed it beautifully. Thank you, Susan. And after the kind of rough draft, and then Mark proceeded to distribute it to the right people. So we got it done, and we got it done in time for the testimony on September 13th. So.
Yes, Katie.
Could we see copies of that testimony, please? Because in the city of Yes, there's a cargo bike provision, so it would be helpful to see
Yeah,
absolutely.
What's been said. Thank you.
Yeah, send it to you.
I think we should, everybody,
please.
everybody should get it. Well, you know, something, again, we'll include that in the packet that goes.
Should I send traffic committee?
It will include it in the packet that goes to everybody.
Okay, good idea. Excellent.
And just
Thank
to
you.
go along with this, so much information is posted that we never get posted about stuff that's relevant to our community like this. Is there a way that we can better do this as a board collectively, committee members, somebody check this, whatever it may be, because we have such congested areas that it really makes a big difference. You know, the pictures on the cargo bike stuff are right adjacent to our, you know, for the density of stuff. And so I just, whatever it is, but just a better way, because it impacts us tremendously, a lot of these small things. And because of the density that we have of a lot of different uses and overlapping, I don't know the solution, but I know this has always been with this. And now we're in a heightened sense of some respects deregulation. And so, or new regulations that are having huge changes. So just
coming fast and furious.
You know, even if it's encouraging our board members, if they see something forward, you know, it's like what, because so many people see little articles.
We can.
And everybody assumes.
Yes, maybe the answer lies in something like, you know, a divided sense of responsibility, like people looking for things in their subject area in the sense of, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's tough. It could be a full time.
Well, I was just going to say it would be great if we had one person who could be just assigned to doing that, looking up.
Yeah, I don't have one person. But we'll
just, there's so much,
think about that.
so many people on the board every morning read so many esoteric, completely far emails that come from various groups, and a lot of them have that information.
Well, I will tell you, if you copy me on things, I can at least try to make sure that it's like, if it's appropriate for, you know, meets our, you know, standards of community, local community and information and things of that nature, that then I can, you know, maybe.
I'm just saying the cargo bike stuff is on.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's not.
Well, that's
It's not
not.
the little- No, that's what I mean, it's covered.
Okay, is there any other new business? If not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Action.
Thank you, everyone, and I will see you on Thursday.
Right.
The Fire Museum. The Fire Museum.
Do we have a word out for that?
Like 10?
10 o'clock would be the outside limit, yeah.
Okay, good night, all.
Good night.
See you Thursday. I'm going to tell you, by the way. So 10 o'clock would be. Whether they will do it.
Yeah,